Genshin's next major region, Sumeru, is shaping up to have probably the most compelling story in the game so far. I know we just got Inazuma, so we won't be able to actually experience it for quite a long time, but it's hard not to get excited with the way the stage is being set up. Also, you know, the recent Archon quest didn't have the best reception, so I'm also hoping they go in a better direction moving forward. So today, I'm going to present all the information currently in the game about what's going on with Sumeru, and do a bit of theorizing on what things we can expect to be explored narratively in the region of Dendro. So the first thing we should talk about is Sumeru's Archon, given that the 7 are the focal point of each region's story. According to Dainsleif, they are the god of wisdom, and this is corroborated by Zhongli commenting that a kite representing the Dendro Archon has markings of tree and leaf that pay honor to wisdom and the passage of time. Ganyu also mentions that they are the youngest of the 7 and are only 500 years old, which conveniently overlaps with the fall of Conria 500 years ago. Now at the end of the Inazuma Archon quest, Yaemiko is the one who suggests we go to Sumeru. Canonically, we trust her, and she has shown multiple times to be a very knowledgeable person. That's why it's interesting that when she tells us about Lessor Lord Kusanali, a deity in whom the people of Sumeru place their faith in, she never uses the word Archon. Deity implies that Kusanali is a divine being, but she isn't necessarily the god of wisdom. There is evidence to support the idea that they are the same person, but the fact is that it isn't confirmed yet, and I want to believe that it isn't confirmed for a reason. In terms of that evidence though, the main thing is the translation slip-up that appears to have recently happened. So shortly after 2.1 was released, a hotfix was sent out to fix dialogues that mention or relate to Lessor Lord Kusanali, changing the male pronouns to female pronouns. Except the thing is that in the English translation, Yaemiko was already using female pronouns for her, and the male pronouns that actually ended up being changed were the ones Ganyu used to refer to the God of Wisdom back in the Liyue Archon Quest Act 3. This makes it seem like a done deal. God of Wisdom equals Lessor Lord Kusanali. But there is a possible explanation that it could just be another mistake or just a coincidence. In the original Chinese text, the God of Wisdom's gender is not revealed at all, so it seems strange for gender-specific pronouns to even be used in the first place. In the past, there have been many instances of translation inconsistencies, and this isn't even the first time a character's pronouns have been corrected. Of course, I do hope that the translation team gets on top of their game soon, but to be honest, given the fact that there is so much text in this game to be translated to so many languages in a pretty short amount of time, I can't really say I'm surprised that this happens. Anyways, my point is that it isn't really reasonable to use this particular English translation as a basis for a major story plot point. Though it may very well be true in the end, we cannot say for certain as of now that they are one and the same. Another reason a lot of people might assume they are the same is because we haven't heard about any other figures of importance from Sumeru besides the sages. Although recently, buried deep in the collected miscellany video for Aloy is a name we have not heard before. Since Aloy isn't from Teyvat, it makes sense for the narrator to actually be Alice and not Dainsleif. In the description of the video though, Alice recites a bunch of titles for herself, including supplier to the renowned Lord Sangemah Bay. This is understandably a huge stretch since we don't know anything about this person, but this suggests the existence of other people under the Lord title. This brings into question if Kusanali even holds the highest level of authority in Sumeru. While we're at it, it wouldn't be a foreign concept for the citizens of Sumeru to worship a god that isn't the current Archon. The Sangonomiya clan of Watatsumi Island have always been loyal to the god Orobashi, even after the Inazuma Civil War ended with it being slain by the Electro Archon. To my surprise at least, Lessor Lord Kusanali has been mentioned prior to version 2.1, back in the Windbloom Festival of 1.4. During the Windbloom Research Report World Quest, NPC Saeed of Sumeru mentions the
Sabzeruz
Festival, which commemorates the birth of Lessor Lord Kusanali. The name is derived from the Persian words for grass and day, so day of grass. Nothing out of the ordinary there, but the original Chinese term used means the flower god's birthday. If we were to look at the pattern of how these 7 are named in Chinese, the Dendro Archon would use the characters for grass and god rather than flower and god. This could be another instance of a god having an alternate title, or it could be a genuine distinction. Like I said, the insistence on explicitly not mentioning these two characters to be the same leads me to think that there is more to it. This is where we get into theory territory. For example, what if the people of Sumeru refuse to recognize the current Archon as their leader because they're so young? Though, as Reddit user You Got Snubbed put it, similar to how Inazuma's Vision Hunt decree was inspired by one of the sword hunts in the Sengoku period of Japan, it's possible that Sumeru's story will take inspiration from Middle Eastern culture, specifically the prophets of Allah who rejected the gods that were worshipped at the time and spread their own religion worshipping who they thought was the one true god. If we relate this back to Sumeru, the real Dendro Archon might be going completely unnoticed, meanwhile Kusanali is the one receiving all the attention as if she were the Archon. After all, although the original 7 Archons emerged because they were victorious during the Archon War, we don't know if there are other requirements for picking up the mantle when the current Archon falls. It doesn't seem like there was anything specific necessary in the transfer of power from Makoto to A, and although an Archon's Gnosis contributes to the amount of power they have, we also now know that someone can still hold a position of power without one. It really all depends on the people of the region to choose who to worship. Now for previous regions, they clearly ended up worshipping their respective Archons, but only because they were the undisputed strongest. The game makes it a point to show us just how powerful they are through how they have shaped the land. So if a lesser god or even a normal vision holder were to somehow achieve an insane amount of power, I feel like it's very possible for a region's people to end up worshipping them if the actual Archon is weaker or just not present. Even though this is heavily speculative, there are surprisingly a few things that suggest there might actually be some accuracy to it. First, the name of the Sumeru Archon Quest chapter is Truth Amongst the Pages of Purana, implying the existence of some type of lie. The line that Dainsleif recites for Sumeru is,
"The god of wisdom's enemy is wisdom itself, and the oasis of knowledge is a mirage in the desert of ignorance. In the city of scholars there is a push for folly, yet the god of wisdom makes no argument against it."
Ignorance and a push for foolishness sounds like deceived people refusing to believe they might be wrong. Meanwhile, if the god of wisdom has no influence, there's not much they can do about it. But hands down, the most convincing piece of evidence for me is the Latin text under each chapter name. Like everything in the Travail preview, they are heavily tied to what happens in the story during that chapter. For example, Liyue's roughly translates to "May the sky fall and a pact be forged," foreshadowing the fall of the Jade Palace and Morax's final contract. What is Sumeru's? Under the flowery things is the light of sagacity. As mentioned before, Kusanali is the god of flowers, and sagacity is a synonym for wisdom. While this can be interpreted in other ways, I feel that it means Kusanali is covering up the existence of the god of wisdom. This would also tie into Yai saying they holistically manage knowledge as a resource, because it makes no sense for a commodity to be something of which there is an infinite supply. There's a reason why the gold standard was a thing, and why printing money gives rise to inflation. Kusanali enacting these systems seems like it would promote maintaining a scarcity of knowledge, which would be pretty counterintuitive for someone who's supposed to be the god of wisdom. Now for a personal prediction of how this might be implemented based on what I think would be cool. Imagine we go to Sumeru, looking to confront Lessor Lord Kusanali, but she does not want to see us under any circumstances. This is because Kusanali heard about how we influenced the Raiden Shogun into repealing the Vision Hunt decree. Knowing that we have already made contact with Archons previously, she knows that it is likely we could find out that she isn't actually the Dendro Archon, despite everyone in the region thinking she is. Along the way, we meet the actual god of wisdom, who we have to help prove is real in order to save Sumeru from the corruption of Kusanali's rule. The Fatui would also presumably be going after Kusanali under the assumption that she holds the Dendro Gnosis. Then we go on an epic adventure, fighting lots of enemies, reading lots of books, and still losing the Gnosis in the end. Obviously most of that was pretty baseless, but I just think something along those lines would be so cool and really different from what we've experienced already. So I know this video is a bit premature in the sense that we will eventually get some more concrete information about Sumeru through drip marketing, but I just think the speculation amongst the community is super interesting. I definitely prefer it to everyone going at each other's necks arguing whether Raiden should get a buff or not. But anyways, I hope you found this video informative and or interesting, and as always, thank you for watching.